kind of an ask. And so this is an audience ask session where you have 20 seconds, a real 20 seconds. I'll cut you off. But you can stand up and say what it is that you might need help with or what you might be able to help someone else with and how they could get in touch with you. So who has an ask of the audience tonight? The hands are always timid. By the end, you're like, please call on me. So who wants to, somebody who, yeah, there we go, over there.
My name is with New York Code and Design Academy across the river. I need help with finding mentors and hiring partners for our students from our web development and app development programs. I can help also with finding new talent, whether it's interns, contractors, or full-time hires for developers. And you can contact me at tom@nycda.com.
Nice. Who else? Yep. You got one? Okay, we'll come back to you next. Yep.
Hey guys, I'm Ferris. I'm launching a product called Bobby Squared, and what we do is make more effective touch points between consumers and businesses in the restaurant and bar industry. We need help with marketing, as many people as we can. The more people we bring on board, the bigger we're going to go. So if you're interested in learning and being a part of a 20-person team so far and growing, reach out to me, bobbysquared.com.
Yes. Lizette?
Yes, so I'm just switching here. Hi, Meerkat. So, hi guys, I am Chef Lizette. I am a chef and entrepreneur, and I really want to engage and prompt the conversation with food and tech. I think it's a space that is underserved, really underserved. I want to be one of the front runners, so I'd love your 2 cents on what you guys do, how you think that the space of food, hospitality, the restaurant industry, essentially your dining experience, just you guys as a consumer, how that can be enhanced with technology. So you could find me at cheflizette.com or at cheflizette1 on Twitter. I'm pretty much on every platform, including Meerkat. So I'd love to engage with all of you guys because you guys all bring something really magical to the table, and I'd love to see how that could be married and partnered with food.
Cool. And she's also live streaming on Meerkat. Who else? Really? Yeah, in the back. Yep.
Hi, my name is Harry Mehta. I run a company called Ricky Robo. It's robotics for education purposes. I'm looking for venture capitalists who can help me launch my company and also hire a great talent. I'm looking forward to 8 amazing minds here who can help me grow. And I'm only one of the purchaser and sell my company for millions.
Great. Yep, back in middle.
Hi, I'm Mike Wilkos. I'm with Vantage Apparel, which is a New Jersey top 40 supplier and decorator of local apparel. We're looking to really get more into technology. We're looking for someone who can do Microsoft.net, a redesign of our site, maybe get a content management system on that. And we're also looking to do like technology, connectivity, APIs, and if anybody needs any partners to do fulfillment or supplying shirts, we want to be that fulfillment for you guys. Thank you.
Cool. The guy was standing, yep.
Yeah, hi, I'm Grant Easterbrook. I'm the co-founder of a startup called Forward Financial. I'm trying to make the 401k process less awful. Anyone here is interested in fintech, just come give me a shout. Happy to talk about it. We've got a lot of things we need and we can help with. So give me a shout anytime. The best way to reach out to me is just come talk to me. So,
What was the name of the, what was the URL?
Dream Forward Financial.
Dream Forward Financial? Got it. Couple more. Yep. Corey?
So my name is Corey Sardi. I'm an account manager at Fireside. We're an information security firm. We handle everything information security related soup to nuts, via training, consulting, software, hardware, and also technical auditing. So if anybody would like to reach out, I'm happy to have a casual conversation to introduce you to our firm. It's never too early to start. In terms of what I can help you with, we're aggressively looking for security engineers of all levels. We're an 80% engineering firm, so 20% everything else. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to pass your resume along and say, oh, look at it. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, my name is Roman Kapp. My amazing domain name is movolution.io. We've built a mobile-led platform. Right now, we're entering the holiday season. I need help with sales and managing internet campaigns to drive customer engagement. It's a complete platform, doesn't need any apps, don't need parallel apps. You just go and develop your campaign. Let's go. It has content and everything. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Well-dressed guy in the back.
Patrick Rogers with WR Holdings. We're a data system creator, and we're looking for business opportunities. Very general. We do.
We can't keep it so general. Like, what are you looking for?
Niche apps, app development, software, online services. So we're looking for new business opportunities, and we are also willing to help with business consulting, as far as web design and video production. You can reach me at progers@wrholdings.com.
All right. Okay, that'll be the last one.
Okay. My name is Peter Kaplan. I am working at New Monitor. We are working on medical devices you would attach to and monitor with your phone. If you've got one of them, there are a lot of things that work, but it takes a while before it gets clinically relevant. That's what we really help people with. And you can reach me at peter@newmonitor.net.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. So, a couple things. If you have news like that, you're looking for help with something, or if you launch a product or a service, we send out a newsletter, as you guys may have seen from some of the things I've been sending out lately. And we'd like to include more of the community announcements in it. And so you can submit things to the newsletter by going to bit.ly/njtechnews. And we have an active blog now, thanks to Bill and Gil and Dominic and a bunch of people. Where is he? Where's Bill? Somewhere there. Yeah. We're going to clap for him later, probably. But if you want to get featured on that blog about your company, about your story, about something that you've learned here at the event, we'd love to give you some free press. So fill out that form, and one of these guys will reach out to you, and maybe we'll write a post about you. The way the rest of tonight is going to go, 3 startups each have 5 minutes to present. Then we'll do our fireside chat, although it's a palm tree side chat with Kevin. And then some closing remarks, and we'll head over to the Ainsworth for those of you who are interested in networking, which is a bar right down the street. We will be quizzing you at the end of the startup presentations, and we're going to give out a gift certificate from a local pizza place called the Zeno. And we're going to be giving out that trophy to one of the startups as the Audience Choice Award. That's a recycled trophy from someone's childhood from 1995 that someone will go home with tonight as the Audience Choice Award. And so with and I need more trophies. We've done this 64 months. I wasn't that great of an athlete. So if you guys have trophies you're looking to unload, I mean, it was good, but 60 trophies, a lot of trophies. If you have trophies you want to get rid of, I could use some more to rebrand. And with that, we're going to get started with Matt from Ceros. Real round of applause for him.
All right, hey guys. Thanks for the warm welcome here. Just get my stopwatch set up here so I don't go over, and make sure I know how to use this thing. This is important. All right, so I'm from a company called Ceros, C-E-R-O-S. Some people call it Ceros. We're not too picky about it. Basically what Ceros is a cloud-based studio and software that enables marketers, designers, and basically anyone who wants to create really cool, interactive, dynamic content without the need for any developers. It's basically comprised of 3 components. The studio, which is where the magic happens. So you log in. It looks very familiar if you've ever used Photoshop or InDesign. This is where you drag and drop assets, come up with animations and interactions. You know, click on this part of the map to show a certain amount of information or things like that. It's basically a cool combination of the magic of Photoshop and InDesign with some animations from Keynote, although we've got a lot more than Keynote does. And then the output is HTML5. So when we talk about published content, when you hit that publish button within the studio, it's immediately live. So you have a standalone asset, URL that you can put anywhere. And that content can also then be embedded. So for example, we have clients who will create an interactive ebook and then take that ebook and embed it within a blog. So you have sort of content that can live alone, sort of sitelets, microsites, interactive assets, as well as, within a piece of content. The sort of typical example of that you might see would be like, they're not a client yet, but we're working on it. New York Times does an election piece, and at the bottom of that article, you see an interactive map where you can click on different parts and see the results by region. That's all getting custom developed right now. And with something like our tool, they would be able to do that with a designer in an hour or two. So you press the publish button, you embed it, and then the cool part, sorry, we converted this to a PDF, so the animations I had in Keynote aren't in there, but effectively you get analytics on this, right? So you think about your traditional analytics for your content, especially passive, static content. You know, your users come, they read a blog, they spend time, they bounce. You know, you have basic sort of site metrics, but when you start to create interactive content, like an interactive map or like a ebook where you can pick which chapter you want to jump to, suddenly it becomes very interesting to know what people are interacting with. So if we had a few thousand visitors to this piece, well, what parts of that content did they click on? What did they find interesting? Which then forms a really nice feedback loop for the type of content you create after that. So why are businesses using Saros? Basically, the top line value is brand awareness and engagement. It's difficult for companies to scale the creation of this type of content. So they typically create a lot of static content, or they spend a lot of money on one big project a year. Now they can create a lot of it and have really cool ongoing brand experiences throughout their content. The bottom line value is it takes a lot of the manpower out of it. There's no coding, there's no testing, so a designer can go into the studio, spend an hour, and have this gorgeous piece to live on the internet afterwards. And ultimately, they don't have to change anything about their workflow. Most of these small companies, mid-sized to large companies that we sell to, they've got a marketing team, they've got a designer, they're just creating kind of mediocre stuff with it. When you give them our tool, all of a sudden the output is phenomenal. You're right, 5 minutes goes really fast. So who are our customers? We've got a bunch of different customers. We just signed Red Bull, which is really, really exciting. They have a ton of events that they want to create this type of content for, but the event comes and goes, so they can't afford to invest a lot on these dynamic landing pages. A bunch of sort of B2B. We've got Dropbox, we've got DataPipe, we've got XAD, which is a cool startup. We just signed Dallas Cowboys. So a bunch of different kind of brands, B2B software, anyone who wants to create really cool content. What are they creating? Well, really anything they want. They have a lot of freedom within the design studio. So you've got interactive editorial, magazines, long-form content, microsites, ebooks, infographics that are interactive instead of static, all kinds of cool stuff. What's marketing saying about this? Well, the big thing from Gartner that came out last year, actually it was the beginning of this year, on January, February, was basically that content marketers are increasingly competing for people's time using the same type of tactics. And so interactive content is the next thing that they need to figure out how to implement. So that's kind of our favorite Gartner quote, because it validates what we're doing and why we're doing it. You know, Demand Gen said 91% more effective when people work with interactive content. And we see our customers see up to a 2x conversion rate. I won't go into pricing because it's kind of irrelevant, but if you do want to know, I'll walk you through our go-to-market, which might be interesting as a learning, but I'm 6 seconds over. All right. Questions? Yeah.
Would it be out of the scope of this thing right now to potentially see one very quickly?
I think it would be, yeah. We don't allow live anything. Real quick, my email, the quickest one is Welly, W-E-L-L-Y, @saros.com. So if you shoot me an email, I'll send you some of the cool examples that people are doing. Let's start over there.
What is your favorite project that you've worked on?
Well, we are most proud of Red Bull because they're super cool and they own the content marketing space. And after we signed them, they sent us like a crate of Red Bull.
What was the project detail?
So they do these cool fluke tag races, and they wanted the site that talked about the next upcoming event to be interactive and have stats and little, flying planes across it and things like that. So that's what they built. But the stuff that Dallas Cowboys is doing is also really cool. They're doing a lot of kind of human interest stories, a lot of embedded video against long form content. That's just kind of a new medium that's nice to see. Yeah.
So what's really interesting about your product is that you guys you have a big customer base, but a lot of your customer base doesn't think interactively. How are you guys addressing that problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, we haven't totally figured it out yet. I mean, frankly, the easiest sales are the ones where you talk to someone who totally gets it. And the hardest sales are the ones that aren't happening or where people are like, I don't know why I want to do that. Or I mean, frankly, the biggest issue we face are complex organizations where you get a marketer who totally gets it, and someone from IT or back-end systems or compliance or whatever suddenly decides that they need to own the IT purchase decision, and the deal falls apart. So that's the biggest issue. Our best cases are either with mid-sized companies or large companies that have small groups. So like Red Bull, we were selling to like a group within a region, you know, so it was easy.
For like a company that's starting to create a website, do they have to already have purchased the domain name and then you come in, or do you help?
Yeah, so when you publish on our platform, the output you have a live URL and you can vanity it to a new spot. That said, we don't really present the tool as like a true full website builder. It's more about the types of assets that would live within a website, because there are a bunch of aspects to when you build a website that wouldn't necessarily, you know, jive with this, like, I don't know, embedding a form and, you know, owning your own CDN and things like that this is not necessarily perfect for. Let me go to this side and then I'll come back.
He's probably sick of this question, but how do you compare it to like Revenue, Adobe View, Wix, and other sites out there?
Yeah, I could answer to those specific examples or all of them, but I would say that our greatest differentiator from most of those are creative design freedom and power. So like WebEdo has some design freedom, but it's kind of weak as a design tool. There's not actually that much you can do. So I'd say design freedom, and then the biggest difference from Muse is overly complex and outputs HTML that you then have to put somewhere. On ours, you press publish and it's live, which actually means as you're building it, you can live preview it. You can literally send the link to someone you're working with and move the stuff around and go, this is what it looks like, and I see it in real time. So it's incredibly effective. How are we doing on time? We're okay? Yeah. Okay. In what sense?
It's in like the sense that you're just publishing, you download it and like it's ready to go, and you're not really using HTML coding.
Yeah, you're not using any coding. So yeah, it's not that different from Canva. You load in, you log into the studio, and you hit publish, and you've got a URL. And then you either use that URL, you assign it to a vanity domain, or you embed it. I don't know what Canva's output is, if that's HTML that you then have to take and put somewhere. Yeah, so none of our stuff is static. It's all live HTML5. Yeah, we do have a lot of enterprise or kind of mid-size software, kind of late stage startup, like kind of $30-50 million and above. Agencies we have a ton of engagement from, but then they never can sort of make the decision to actually work with us. It's a fascinating. I mean, we probably have a dozen agencies, but we have way more interest from them than actually convert.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before he gets down, so I'm a big believer that public speaking is a really important part of what he just went through, and all startups' behavior and ability to move an audience about some topic. And so with that in mind, we've brought in a company. Michael came in a couple months ago, and this week tonight we have Victoria, the lead trainer at GK Training, and she's going to give a 60-second constructive critique on the speaking ability of each startup tonight. And so with that, I introduce Victoria.
It's like a roast.
It won't be so bad, I promise.
Can you stand up?
Absolutely. Hello, nice to meet you all. I'll do a very brief intro so we can get to feedback. As he said, I'm Victoria, and I'm a lead trainer with GK Training and Communications. We run the whole gamut when it comes to communications, mostly focusing on professional coaching, helping entrepreneurs, startups, pitchers, etc. So with that, if I'm an expert, let's go ahead and start with a few things that can help you come across as less hesitant or casual. I stopped counting ums after 35 in the first minute. It's okay. It happens a lot. But what that does is make you sound hesitant when you actually are quite confident. You seem confident and comfortable up there, and that belies the content you're trying to share. Next, I would say focus a little bit more on variety. If we hear the same sound over and over and over, we check out, even if something is fascinating and visual up here, or if you're thoroughly engaged. Changing up the sound and quality of your voice lets us know what's important. And lastly, I would say instead of those ums, if you can pause and breathe more. This is hard to do. So the best thing to do when you're rehearsing, pitching, or presenting in any way is to record yourself. Time yourself at home and record it, watch it, take notes on what you don't like, and make sure that you remove that before you come and present to us. But overall, you seem really comfortable speaking, and that's a big start.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
How about a big round of applause for Matt and Victoria? You got up there. And next up is Saeed. Where is it? Here we go. From Vagn. Ready? You're up.
Ready. So I'm Saeed from Vagn. We're a startup from Newark, New Jersey. And the company was founded by Mike Liguori, our founder. He's in the audience. And we're in the business of natural language controls. So natural language controls are simple. They are about the way you speak to your friends and family. And, you know, like, so tell one of your kids, could you make the upstairs a little warmer? And it's about connected devices. Natural language controls are not very interesting if they're all about 0 divided by 0 and asking for weather. But if you have a connected car or connected home, actually they bring business value. And in an industrial setting, they actually bring productivity. What's that? Okay. And in an industrial setting, they bring more productivity. A lot of things you could do with you needed to do with 2 people, now you can do with 1. And then initially, we're targeting the connected home and the connected car market. So that's the market. And the customers we serve are industrial companies that are system integrators and system houses in those markets. So by the time I'm done, hopefully I've covered most of this material. The one item I want to highlight is what's the basis of competition and how is the landscape shaping and how money is going to be made, because that, as it turns out, is going to be quite important in the industry. So let's start with where's the industry going? And the key element of the key driver in the industry is digital business, where connectivity and context, that is information, is driving value. New ways of creating revenue, new productivities, and profit pools are moving in a big way from one place to the other. And of course, this is all about connected devices, and how you control connected devices over time is going to get more and more complicated. And human beings are very good at natural speech. So you kind of take advantage of a natural human capability when you bring natural speech. And it's simple. In a mobile device, in a home connected device, you basically speak and things happen. And we offer both cloud and embedded technology. And, you know, here's the list of the technologies we tend to use. And this is the kind of things you could say: make upstairs warmer, what's the pH of the swimming pool, you know, navigate my way to Newark City Hall, and whatever else that you normally speak. A couple of interesting points I'd like to make. You know, we're a startup, we're new to this business, and the technology is new, and the customer satisfaction rivals the customer satisfaction of the overall information industry. And we can only get better from here. So there's a lot of upside, and things will get better, even though they are quite good now. The other 2 points is that this is an opportunity for top line and margin expansion. A lot of the customers who've tried the product, they see it as something they would recommend to others, as well as something that they would buy more of themselves. And if you do the math, it's an easy 15% EBIT and a factor of 1 dot something multiple expansion, big driver for valuation. So you're a business owner, you're an executive, the CEO decided that that's what you want to do. Clearly you can't do without. You could go with the framework competitors, the likes of Apple, Amazon, Google. They define the whole framework, and I'll talk a little bit more about that next slide. You could hire your own staff, but as you all know, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes time. And then there's the independents like Vagn, and there are a number of other players in the industry. We're unique among them, and we can get into that. But the more important thing is to talk about the framework competitors, because the tendency is to go there first. So take a look at this picture. This is one framework competitor's framework. It's my devices, it's my software architecture, it's my cloud. If you want to define new services, you do it my way. by the way, in this picture, do you want to be me or do you want to be you? And if you think this is an interesting place to live, you may want to have a conversation with people in the music industry. So at Vagn, we offer a complete solution. We offer a large number of services. We offer system integration with third parties so you can live in the world of framework competitors. And finally, to quote Vern Law, a pitcher from the Pittsburgh Pirates from the 50s and 60s, experience is a tough teacher. She gives the exam first and the lesson second. We've had a lot of exams as a team. So to summarize, it's real, it's here, it's now, it works, and Captain Picard will have his tea delivered by the computer with natural language voice recognition through Vagn. Question? Back far away?
Could you define your revenue model? The pitch seems like it's geared towards players who want to integrate with your software.
So our revenue model is twofold, actually threefold. One of them is a recurring revenue model. We typically try to model ourselves as a fraction of our customers' revenue. So also, there are some customers that are interested in a one-time model. So if you're dealing with a thermostat that you go to Home Depot and you buy it for X dollars, so we also have a price model that works in that environment. But, longer term, I sort of suspect the one-time model is not going to survive, but clearly in the short term, you've got to offer it. Yes, there was another question closer in. Yes, sir.
Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get what the product is. A controller, or is it just a service for me to build my own controller?
What it is a software service. So we provide the software, we provide the professional services. So if you're a home automation system integrator, what you will do is you use us as a component of your overall solution. Clearly, there's a lot more to connected cars and connected homes. We are a supplier to you as a system integrator. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. So who's your target industry? Is it more hardware or software companies as well?
So most of our customers tend to be combination. So they make clocks and thermostats and components that go in the car, but also typically have a cloud service that goes with it or an embedded software with some kind of an arrangement to provide updates with it.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily work with just primarily software companies.
Well, you could be a software company, but you think about if you're catering to the likes of ADT, that may actually be a software you choose to sell to them.
Like you said before, like system integration.
Right. So we are a component of a more complete solution.
Would you be open to it?
Yeah, we absolutely are open to it. Yeah. See me afterwards. Oh. I've got order sheets in my bag. Any other questions? Clear as mud. Great.
All right, let's jump to the constructive critique.
Great. Excellent job. Wonderful. So when we were talking before about having the opportunity to record yourself before you come up and present, that can help with a couple of things. You may have heard, if you listen to just the sound and quality of your voice, there's some vocal tension, which is coming about from not being able to breathe enough. Breathing is important when standing in front of people because our tendency is to rush, rush, rush and get through. Something else that does, however, is make everything sound like one long run-on thought, and then it's harder for your audience to really capture what you think is the most important morsel of information or the big takeaway you want them to be left with. So when you do those long run-on thoughts, everything has a little bit of upward inflection, which also adds to hesitancy. So it's important to really land your thoughts and land the points from time to time so we can take a pause and a breath with you and then move on to engage and learn more about your company. Something else to think about, also, you had really good timing. You didn't run out of time, so you must have timed this out for yourself. Did you rehearse out loud at all before coming up here tonight? Wonderful. He spoke in his head. Next time it would be really, really good to rehearse out loud. Oftentimes we don't know that only 7% of what we say, meaning the actual words that we share, falls on people when it comes to making a first impression. 35% is the sound and quality of your voice, and the rest is your nonverbal communication. So that adds up to a lot of what you can rehearse without just being a master of your content. Overall, very good.
The bar has certainly been raised having a professional consultant. I was not prepared for that. I'm glad to be here. Before I get started, by a show of hands, how many people have an iPhone? Pretty much almost everybody. So I have now less than 5 minutes to demonstrate the value of Live and List and show you how we can help you live your life to the fullest. If you completely ignore my talk and are downloading it right now, I would not be mad at you. So I've identified a problem in my life that I decided to try to solve with technology. And I thought that the rest of the world could benefit from it. Also, by show of hands, how many people agree with this statement? Coordinating plans with your friends can be a total pain in the ass. Right? The endless group texts, the emails, what's the name of that restaurant again? Where's it located? How do I get there? So this is the problem that we set out to solve. And we built a messaging app called Live and List. And we streamline the social dynamics for how people come together in the real world. Whether you're planning a party, a trip, or a night out at the movies, we make it dead simple in order to coordinate your plans with your friends. We were inspired by the ruthless efficiency that dating apps brought to the pickup process, which I was using at the time that I came up with this. And so we decided that we were going to build a messaging app that had features for planners, the social butterflies who always have the great ideas, that just need an easy way to distribute it to their friends, as well as their lazy improviser friends who like to lean back, see what their options are first. So here's the app. We're going to start with List. So I think there's a little laser pointer here. So the first thing we have is your calendar. And what we do is we organize group chats on a sliding calendar so that you can have all of your details in one place. You can simply click on it, check out the video invite, which is, whoops, wrong button. Here, we're the first to market leveraging video invites into the application so you can record a short 15-second plan, hype it to your friends, and then you can share it. And then on the far corner, when you actually go into the detail page, you guys should all recognize this, a little bit like Facebook events, if it got smashed together with WhatsApp and maybe a little Pinterest. So the next thing that you do is share it with your friends. So you can send it private invites. You're just coordinating something between you and your girlfriend, you and your buddies, invite them, no one else has to know about it. But if you wanted to throw an idea out there, maybe me and my buddy, we're gonna go to Costa Rica, go surfing. I know that he wants to go, but I have a bunch of surfer friends that live in different parts of the country. Let's see who might be open to it. So I can open it up to my group of friends as a casual future status update, which would live in your activity feed. So as more and more of your circle of friends come on board and start sharing ideas, you'll never have no plans on a Friday or Saturday evening. And then on the far corner, the activity feed, as it starts to fill up, we have this toggle that you can change from this view here to a map view, so that if you're planning a trip to San Francisco, you can change the date and the location and see what your friends are planning. Somebody may be throwing a birthday party, didn't think to invite you because you live here in Hoboken, but you're going to be in town in 2 weeks, so you ask to join the event, and then you join the actual group chat. As simple as list, share, do. So the real true power of this is a real life example. I have a lot of friends married with kids. This is pumpkin picking and apple picking season, and they would never think to invite the single guy to tag along with them. I have a Harley. I'm always looking for an excuse to go somewhere, and if I had this app and my friends were using it, I could lean back, see what's happening, say, you know what, Sunday the weather looks good, let me take a ride, I'll join you, and we can get together. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we're hoping to help create some kismet. That simple act of letting your friends know what they want to do or know what you want to do can help you live your life to the fullest. That's it. Questions start here.
Android?
Coming soon. I have a potential developer standing in the back. Anybody else?
How do you get if your whole group doesn't use the tool,
Yeah.
it's a lot less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get your friends to download this instead of just sticking with email, which I would assume, or text, which I would assume is the most
Yep.
common way people do it today?
So what we've done is we've built in a web link so that when you create an event, it's super helpful for you, the organizer, whether or not your friends have it. You'll know if they do have the app, and if they don't, you can simply just send them a text. This is built off of your mobile phone graph. So these are people that you actually get together with. You can shoot them a text. They'll get a web link that looks exactly like the app. They'll see the event, the date, the video invite, or the picture invite. And then the call to action is to see the real-time group messaging about this event, download the app now. So we believe that, sure, people can invite their friends, hey, just download this app. But honestly, our focus is on that authenticity of being invited to an event, not to download an app. So you're going to hear about it from the first time, besides this room. Your friends will hear about it for the first time. When you decide to plan something, invite them to it, and hopefully we gain that goodwill, and then they download the app and realize the true potential of it. In the back. Oh, thank you. Cool. Awesome. Here. This is the start. I've been sort of chasing that validation from the tech community. We were featured in TechCrunch on Monday. We were featured on Product Hunt yesterday, which was a direct result of an author that I met here about a year ago. His name is Nir Eyal. If you haven't read his book, Hooked, it's an amazing book about habit-forming products. And he's also an investor in Product Hunt and came here very strategically, hoping to meet him. And stayed in touch. And when that TechCrunch article came out, I hit him up with it, and then he posted it on Product Hunt. So I'm kind of, after this initial round, I'm done with the tech community. Certainly looking for VCs, press, and engineers. But now, I want the Stevens students, I want the fraternities, I want the sororities. I got to go hit the bars on Sundays when you can't get into Wicked Wolf with my t-shirt, my flyers, my postcards to say, download this app. We can help make your life easier to coordinate all of this with your friends. So it's a side project right now. So we're bootstrapped, hustling, trying to get to that point where we can show enough of that user engagement to warrant an investment. Far corner.
I like the UI, it looks unique. I understand it kind of makes it less personal but more efficient, but I'm trying to understand what the primary efficiency is.
Mm-hmm.
And, in terms of time or another efficiency, what is the key efficiency?
Do you have a group text, like a group thread with your buddies? Endless nonsense, sharing all the time. Sometimes you'll get together with those buddies, but sometimes certain people may be on a group thread that don't live around here. So what we're doing is we're sort of getting out of that clutter of that thread by saying, here's what I want to do. Invite the people that you want, and those that can join. Those that aren't going, don't have to put up with the details about what you're going to do. So you keep your group text thread about Instagrams and memes and all that stuff separately. So the true friction is organizing all of your information about going out. That's all that we want. This isn't a communication app for general communication. I just want that fraction when you decide what you're doing on a Friday or Saturday, that you pick up Live and List and you coordinate your plans using this app versus emailing or throwing it out to the group text. As you're on board your circle of friends, there's that possibility of kismet, because if you put an idea out there to your friends that you know are coming, but there's a friend that you may not know, his wife might be out of town, so he's allowed to come out and play. He sees it, and now he can join you. So it's if you've ever used a dating app, there's some efficiencies around matching people with what their friends want to do in order to actually get to that point of doing it. Yes? Last question.
How many people are on your team, and how are you able to find people that really believe in this and were able to sell the project forward?
Yep, hustling. Coming to events like this. I met my original partner down at DigiDay's Mobile Innovation Camp, and it wasn't a typical conference. We actually competed against each other, and my partner built an app in 24 hours. I saw him sitting at a bar with the wristband on that team. I went up to him and I said, hey, you were on that team. How did you guys pull that off? And he said he designed the app. And I said, let me buy you a beer. I've got an idea. pitched him the idea. By the time we left there, he was on board, started designing it. We worked on it for a year. We're not the first to try this. There's been a lot of attempts. It's a really tough category. We're fully aware of those challenges. From there, he brought in our technical co-founder, which is a colleague of his. And so I sold the initial vision, continue to sell it. They bought it, they've built it, and we've got, big dreams. Thank you, guys. Now for the hard part.
He almost left the stage. That's just not going to happen. Well done.
Thank you.
You practice out loud, yes?
For 2 years.
Okay. Does it show? Yes.
I wish I could develop, but I can't. This is what I do.
So because we only have a minute, I'm going to go ahead and go with what we can still work on and then give you some kudos. Because you practice the presentation itself, the pitch out loud, you can also give yourself a heads up by polishing and practicing your Q&A.
Yes.
Have people who have no idea about your business field questions to you, some curveball questions, so you become as polished in that part of your presentation as you do in the initial part.
Cool.
If we don't focus on both, then one is outweighted. Let's talk about what's going really well. High level opening, right? He woke us up, he grabbed us with a question, and then followed that with a personal story. So that's something we saw tonight for the first time, and it woke up your audience, and especially after we've already heard a few pitches, we may have needed that, right? So really well done. You use pacing to your advantage. Your usual rate of speech is rather quick, rather rapid, but he knows when to slow down to let us know what's really important, what we should take away if we don't remember anything else. So that was really well done. What I would say, though, is that in terms of the tone of voice, pretty soft-spoken, right? So we could also add some variety in that. You can increase your power from time to time. That'll also wake us up as we move through the presentation or the pitch. And also you had what could be considered a mistake, right? You said it was, not the wrong button or something like that. Yeah. He had a moment of transparency in a room that's completely full. That could throw you off, and it didn't. You kept yourself steady, moved right through, and we didn't feel worse the wear for it or feel worried for you, which is really good in terms of controlling and engaging with an audience. So
great.
Really well done.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, nice job. So, how about a big round of applause for all the startups as well as Victoria. So guys, listen, I know I've been kind of on you about this before, but when somebody comes up here and shows off their startup, it's like showing you their baby. And with these claps, it's like, the baby may be a little ugly. We got to do better than that. So how about a real round of applause for these guys who came up and very much exposed themselves tonight. All right, you guys have been sitting for a long time. This is the audience high five. Stand up, high five your neighbor, and sit back down. We're very close to getting started with Kevin, I promise. But right now, take out your phone, and we're going to give away a gift certificate. We're going to choose the Audience Choice Award, and we're going to see what you guys know about Kevin Ryan. So take out your phones and call that number. You'll notice on the top right, as you dial in and enter that extension, it will show that you are connected, or it should, momentarily. There we go. We'll get started in a minute. You can get your keypad ready. And it's going to ask you a series of polling and trivia questions that you're going to use your keypad to respond to. You're welcome to participate. We won't let you win. All right. The rest of you can continue to dial in if you're not in yet. So, first question will be, get your keypad ready. Brian from Living List rides what? A bicycle, a Vespa, or a Harley? You'll notice on that top right, there's a countdown clock and there's countdown points, and the faster you get these right, the more points you get. It's a Harley. 78% of you got it right. Vagn is based out of where? Is it New York City, Newark, or Hoboken? 7 seconds. Were you guys paying attention? The answer is Newark. Nice job paying attention tonight, guys. I appreciate that. According to Saros, when was the very first print ad? Was it 1472, 1872, or 1901? What do you think, Kevin?
I had to be listening really close for this one. I don't remember.
He did not mention it. Who should win tonight's New Jersey Tech Meetup Audience Choice Award? Is it Saros, Living List, or Vagn? These bars move in real time to show you what you guys think. It looks like we have a winner in Living List. This applause we will save for the end. Couple more. After this, I am first going to head to Ainsworth for networking, RSVP to the next meetup, or watch the Republican debate on DVR, which is very likely much more entertaining than this. Interestingly enough, that drives a huge amount of traffic to the networking afterwards, so we look forward to seeing you there. Among Kevin's companies, my favorite is number 1, Business Insider, number 2, Gilt Group, Contour, MongoDB, or Zola. They don't like Zola, Kevin. They may not know Zola. Kevin believes the most important factor to success is what? The team, the funding, or the idea? Well done. And our winner will come up momentarily. Whoever you are, find me at the end of this. How about a big round of applause for Brian from Living List? And Kevin, you can make your way up to the stage. All right. Whoa. How you doing? Hi. All right. So part of why we do that is to get a sense of what you guys know about Kevin. So we'll talk a bit about Zola. But let me tell you his official and real bio. So Kevin P. Ryan is one of the leading internet entrepreneurs in New York. He's founded and is chairman of several businesses, including Business Insider, MongoDB, Gilt, and Zola, even though none of you have heard of that company. It's a wedding registry. Combined, these companies have raised more than $500 million in venture capital funding and currently employ almost 2,000 people. He's previously helped build DoubleClick from 1996 to 2005, first as president and later as CEO. He led DoubleClick's growth from a 20-person startup to a publicly traded global leader with over 1,500 employees. In 2013, he was named one of the 100 most influential New Yorkers in the past 25 years by The Observer. Aside from his professional responsibilities, he serves on the board of Yale Corporation and Human Rights Watch, is vice chairman of the Partnership of New York City, and is a member of the Council on Foreign Affairs. He previously served on the boards of INSEAD, the Direct Marketing Association, the Ad Council, Hot Jobs, and the advisory board of Doctors Without Borders. He has a BA from Yale University and an MBA from INSEAD. We need another good round of applause. Please welcome Kevin Ryan. Hi. It may not be on.
Is it on now?
There we go. So which one of those companies is your favorite?
You know, they're like children. You can't pick favorites that way. But each one's different. The three that have been around for somewhere between 6 and 8 years, so Business Insider, Mongo, and Gilt. In some ways, Gilt is the most fun, just because it's in a lot of fun industries. So when you have business, sorry. When you have, as part of your business, you have to actually be out for a night in a nightclub in Las Vegas with Kim Kardashian. That makes it fun. Business Insider is the one that touches the most people. So we'll probably have close to 100 million uniques this month, which is incredibly validating. We started with 2 employees, 8 years ago. Mongo is actually probably going to be the most valuable out of all those companies. So different metrics for each one of them. Zola is actually doing particularly well. Zola will be in its 3rd year next year. We'll collect about $100 million in cash and wedding presents flowing through the system. So it's actually one of the fastest growing e-commerce companies in New York. Contour hasn't even gone public as a site yet. It's similar to House if you did it for offices. So 15 employees. It's only, I started putting the team together about 8 months ago, so much earlier. And then I have a new healthcare company that I have just put together this summer, and that'll launch in December. Hasn't been announced yet.
Since that, it is topical given the debate tonight, tell us a little bit about the healthcare company.
So that hasn't been announced yet, but it's a B2B space, so it's going to be providing products, staffing products for hospitals. So it'll be a marketplace, and it'll launch in December, January.
So let's talk about how you got here, because you guys may have noticed he's a little bit older than most of our founders, and he's turning 51 next month, or 52 next month. So you maybe, in some cases, got a later start than others. So tell us a little bit about some of the early days, in particular, your days at Scripps, and how your experience with Dilbert affected your interest in leaving the company.
Yeah, I originally had a finance background, and when I was 32, I was working for EW Scripps, which is a publicly traded media company. And as part of that process in 95, I launched a website. And so it was pretty early in the commercial internet. By the beginning of 96, we had a very, very successful, probably top 10 website, actually. Dilbert was well known among engineers. People forget, even in this room, that we really didn't have search engines at that point, so it was hard to find things. And so beginning in 96, I just decided that I thought the internet was going to be the most fundamental thing in my lifetime from a business point of view, which sounded obvious today, but I went to the parent company and said, you should give me $2 million and I'll help build up an internet division. And they thought about it for a long time, like 2 months, in an annoying way, and then came back and said, no, we're not sure the internet's going to be big. Remember, CD-ROMs were really big in 94. This could be the next CD-ROM thing that then collapses. And so I then concluded that actually I didn't need them, that my fundamental idea about the internet was a good one, and I was willing to bet my sort of career on it, and I would go start an internet company. And then the only thing that changed is I went out to see the companies who were already doing something in the space I was interested in, which was internet advertising. And I found 1 or 2 companies and I thought nothing too interesting. I met the guys who had just founded DoubleClick 5 months before. Very, very impressed with them. In fact, I'm still working with one of those 2 guys today, which is almost 20 years later. And they said, why don't you come join us instead of starting your own company? And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. What they've created already was very, very impressive. And I joined them. It was very small. We went public 2 years after the company was founded, something that you can't even do anymore. It was just too fun, and so it's now illegal, actually. We went from 0 to 2,000 employees in 4 years, opened in 25 countries. So just a crazy operational, 4-year period. So fun. And then the internet collapsed. So that was less fun. 70% of our clients went bankrupt. Don't do that. That's a bad thing.
Let's come back to that in a second. But first, there's something there's several things you've done that are different than status quo, or at least headlines. And one was something you just mentioned in joining Dwight and the other co-founders at DoubleClick, in that there are a lot of founders in this room and many people watching who would not be willing to join another person's company. And in fact, you were, I think you said, the 12th employee there.
Yeah.
So it seems very clear that today you feel very strongly about being the founder in the companies that you're involved with, but then you seem to have felt less strongly about that. Can you talk more about your pull towards entrepreneurship in that particular moment?
Yeah, and I think, look, what I advise people when you're making career choices, I think in general people overvalue, how much money they're going to make, the title, and founder is obviously a great title, and they undervalue the only thing that really matters, which is the company going to be successful? And so, because if you were the 200th employee at Google or any company that became very successful, you have an awesome experience. On every dimension. I'm not even talking financially, although financially as well. The network you have will be great. The experience will be great. Everyone gets promoted because when you're running a company like this, there's no one there. And so you promote who's ever next to you out of desperation because you're moving so quickly. So just everything is better. It's fun. And so I always tell people, just start with that. Take a more junior position. In that case, I was taking a more junior position. I thought I'd be CEO, and I actually started as CFO, and I quickly became president, and then I became CEO, but I didn't know that was going to happen. And because I picked the right company, and because we built it, it was the right move.
And how did that decision, I know you took a big pay cut to make that move, how did that affect your home front? Was your wife fully on board, and what set up an environment that made that something comfortable for you to do in totality?
Yeah, and it was, a big decision at the time. I was making $250,000 at the time. I got an offer for $120,000. I didn't have enormous amounts of savings. We had one child at home. Another one was going to be coming soon. And so, if it didn't work out, it wasn't going to be a great decision. My wife had worked at Apple actually in the 80s, so knew more about the tech space in some ways than I did. She'd been a computer programmer. And so she was very supportive of it and thought it would be great and believed in what I was doing. I also felt like worst case, if a year later the company didn't work, as long as I had picked the right sector, which I thought I had, then I'd go work somewhere else and it would work out okay.
And so now we can talk a little bit more about that downturn. So when you were CEO and the market took a big turn and there was some slow, painful layoffs, first explain kind of what happened there and then what could you have done differently, if anything, to have managed that situation differently?
It's hard because one of the things, once things turn, like everything turns tomorrow, what you realize is every decision you made in the last year, in retrospect, was a terrible decision. So the company I bought for $100 million in Sweden, in the downturn became worth 10 million. Oops, my bad. So the new office lease that I had just taken, because, I was scrambling to keep up. You never think about the details, but you go from 0 to 2,000 employees, you need a lot of office space. And so I had a 12-year lease, 15-year lease at that point. I just signed, and then I had 800 open spots. So I went to the landlord and said, look, obviously the prices have come down. Let me just write you a check for the difference between the two so I can get out of it. And he's like, yeah, no problem. That check is $80 million. And so I wrote a check, which is a big check, for $80 million to get out of my lease. Get rid of half my lease. And so that would bankrupt most companies. We happen to have a lot of cash. That is brutal. And by the way, when you start a company, that's what, if it works, it's obviously great. And I've had a lot of things that have worked well. And when things are going badly, it sucks. And so when you first round of layoffs is not so bad because your bottom 5% or 10%, you rationalize that you probably shouldn't have been here anyway. But then when you do it again and again and again and again and again, and when we did our 7th round of layoffs, everyone hates you, including all the people that thought you were a genius. One thing you'll learn, this will surprise you all, but when hedge funds buy your stock at $130 a share, and then it goes down to $5 a share, they don't feel very good about it. I didn't know that, but all these people.
Turns out.
Yeah, and so they hate you. Employees hate you, and you've also just personally gone to people. You're recruiting all day long, and so I'm going to people I know and saying, look, I want you to quit your job. Come join this. This is part of history. Yes, you have kids at home. You're taking a big pay cut. And then a year later, we fire you. And I fire you. Yeah, because we don't have any work for you. And you can't even get your old job back because there are no jobs now. And so it's hard not to feel pretty terrible about that, even though it wasn't malicious.
How did people feel about you personally after that experience?
So,
how do you think?
Range of things. So some people take it very badly. Some people, all of a sudden, a year or two later, realize that, everyone was going through this. We were a provider of a product to businesses. So all those people used to laugh at, pets.com, those are my clients. And so, every single quarter, 100 of them would call up and say, really feel bad about this, but we're going out of business. I know we won't be a client anymore. And by the way, the $100,000 check and everything I told you was coming? Yeah, it's not coming. So we're not even going to pay you for the last several months. And so over and over and over again. And so I had to turn over the entire management team because what happens is the 5th time I could just see that head of sales or head of marketing just doesn't have the stomach and doesn't have the optimism to do another round of layoffs. And so in that situation, since no one really wants to come work for you anymore, you promote your number 2, who's super excited to take on more responsibility and doesn't feel like it's their fault, and you have a new team, and you have to do that.
So after that experience, you started several companies.
Yeah.
You went from seemingly not a founder or by DNA to like super founder. Mm-hmm. What switched for you there? So
when we sold DoubleClick, I really started thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? I had a great run, loved my 9 years. By then, it was enormously profitable and a very valuable company. So it all ended well, even with that little 3-year dip of horribleness. But then I thought, okay, there's 3 choices. I could either go run a large internet company, because I was one of the few people in New York City who had managed 1,000 people in the internet world. And there were no companies in 2005, even if you said I could run anything, that I really was excited about. Nothing I thought that was that interesting at that moment. I could go do something more financially oriented, become a VC, which a lot of people do, but I really like running things. And so decided to do something that I had never seen anyone do, which was start more than one company. I thought I had the ability to pick ideas, build people, raise money, and do that, and diversify my risk a little bit. The one thing you want to avoid is doing a startup. There's a good chance that a startup won't work. That's fine. What you don't want to do is spend 4 or 5 years on a startup and have it not work. You have to think of your life as a professional athlete does, which is that you have a limited shelf life. And so those years are extremely valuable. And so most people, you wouldn't be an entrepreneur unless you were just fundamentally, genetically overly optimistic. Otherwise, you'd be doing something much more sensible. But since you are doing this, you've just got to watch out for that trap of saying, it's all going to work. Yes, we didn't hit this year's goals, but I know it's going to work, and we're going to make some more changes. It's going to be great. And then years go by, and you end up with nothing. So I wanted to diversify the risk, and so that's what I did.
So for people, now I would assume that it's a little bit easier to start companies and lose some of the investment, that you can absorb that a little bit more easily. But for people who are here who hear that and think, wow, this is a really important year for me, but they don't have the financial wherewithal to fail or to take the bigger risk, and they're sort of scraping together. What do you advise people like that? What should they do?
Sorry, people who already have a startup, you're saying? Or?
Yeah, who are thinking about one, who maybe already have one, who are doing it on the side, who are trying to go all in, but feel a pressure not to because of their financial needs.
So look, each situation is different. There are some people who could be in a moment where you just can't do it right now. It's not possible. But otherwise, what do most people do? They edge into it. So they start a startup on the side. They build a team. You've got to be able to convince people to join your startup and spend time on that. I mean, you are the recruiter in chief. And so if you can't get anyone who's really great to join you, that's telling you something. That's telling you something pretty important. So you've got to build that. You've got to, you can do a lot of work. And then, look, there are thousands of people in the city who have put money into companies. And if they believe in you and your idea, they will give you money. Let's not forget, there is a ton of money. There's closer to too much money in this sector rather than not enough. So if you're not getting funded and you've gone out to a lot of people, you've got to really look in the mirror, and each situation is different. Figure out, why is that? Why are people really not giving you money? Because, how many startups are there? 10,000? So 10,000 companies got funded. But not every idea is the right moment, and maybe you don't have the right team. Is your team incredible?
And when do you think the right moment is to, we heard from Brian from Live and List, who said he wants to get more traction to then show to investors. There are some people who say with a deck like what he's got today, he might be able to raise some capital. What are your thoughts on timing?
So, look, you want to have proof points. So one proof point is the team. The second proof point is how far you can get in the product on what you've done so far. So if you've got a functioning product, ideally you have a functioning product and you have some customers. I generally like to raise money. So but I put in the initial funding that gets us to the point, which will be a couple $100,000, but that's just the equivalent of what if you did an angel round. Then I raise a VC round at launch. I don't want to be too far past launch, because then you start getting into numbers and things like that. I want to avoid that. I want to raise money based on the hope and the product and the team at that point. And that is often the right moment. So, but the reality is people have to like it. I've launched a lot of different products in companies, and a bunch have really worked well, but I've had products that didn't work, and I thought they were going to work. And the cold, hard truth was that 3 months after they launched, you could see people like, yeah, it's nice, but they weren't that excited about it. Let's not forget that almost every successful company in the internet space got there without a single dollar of advertising. If you have to rely on that, your product's probably not that great. Business Insider to this day has never spent $1 in advertising. And we have 100 million people on the website because the product's great and people passed it on. Gilt got to $100 million in revenue, which actually took about a year, without any advertising, because people were telling their friends about it and they liked it. And I had a company years ago called ShopWiki, which was a search engine for shopping, and it didn't grow like that because it apparently wasn't that great. And so the market told me.
How much earned media did you get out of those just because of your own background? I mean, is it reasonable? I just want to make sure that we're being fair, right? Gilt, I'm sure, got a lot of press because you were involved.
So, all you get in the beginning is you get a couple of stories, and that's it. And so, people will come. Business Insider got nothing. Business Insider never issued a press release, even to announce that it was starting.
Why is that?
Because it was super small. It was two people. And so Henry Blodgett and one other person just started writing to a site. It's the worst marketing strategy you've ever heard. Although it did work, but literally just came in, the two of us could do it tomorrow, and started writing to a site. And the next day came back and wrote some more and wrote some more and wrote some more. And the traffic grew and it just kept growing.
So,
but it was distinctive and good.
But there must have been a meeting where you and Henry discussed, oh, and by the way, we're not going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
And how did that go over?
No, it was more, Henry is always cautious about marketing. And so I would probably do more marketing, but he's always believed, and it has been validated, that if the product is very good, it will win out. And so there was no press on that. And we also had no money. I mean, we were launching a media company at the time, so people hated the idea. It's an example where we had a lot of difficulty raising any money at all. Now everyone comes to me and says, oh yeah, I always knew it was going to be a great idea. I'm like, yeah, you were one of the 50 people who turned me down for funding. I've been rejected many, many times.
So there was a few directions we can go there, but one is you said that Henry is not a big fan of marketing. So when do you turn the keys over, and how do you build up that trust to say, okay, it's your call?
So in early on in most companies that I was starting, I would start as a CEO for the first 6 months or a year and build up the team from that point. In Business Insider's case and in Mongo, I couldn't really be the CEO because I'm not a great writer and I wouldn't have had the time to do that. So from day one, when I had this idea, I went out to try and find someone who could be the CEO from day one. And so interviewed a bunch of people at Forbes and Fortune, couldn't find the right person. Henry was an unusual choice because he had an investment banking background, had never been a formal journalist, although he'd done some writing and was a fantastic writer. So from day one, he's a CEO. And so, you have to, that's just a partnership relationship where I defer to you, you defer to me. It's working. It's no different than when my wife and I plan a trip. We've got to reach a consensus at the end. And so sometimes I defer to you.
So you find it to be a very collaborative relationship with the CEOs?
Yeah, ultimately they are running the company, so they need to be making most of the major decisions. If I'm really saying, look, I think you should go left, and they think strongly you go right, generally you got to go right. And at a certain point, you'll see the results over time. Yeah. The CEO has to be accountable for the results, and if they're not great, then you do make a change. And so, I've made changes over time for both Gilt and Mongo. And not just me, there's a board as well that went out and found a new CEO for that moment. Henry's done a great job for 8 years, so it's an incredible success.
There are a lot of people who've been on this stage, like Brad Feld or Gary Vaynerchuk, who would talk about having absolute focus on one thing. That has not seemingly been your course here, and it sounds like you're at capacity. So I'm curious how you manage, or close to.
So you do need total focus if you're going to be the CEO. You can't easily be doing very many other things if you're a CEO. But that's why I can't be CEO really anymore. I mean, I could step in for a month or two to help out a company, but fundamentally I can't be CEO anymore. So
well, let's talk about the process. Maybe we can use Contour as an example. Yeah. Day one, you have this. You've now built out lots of office spaces. You've realized the pain point.
I realized the pain point. I think this should exist. So last June, I'm thinking about this idea. I think it's a good idea. I spent a couple weeks thinking about the idea, talking to a few architects, doing my own somewhat limited due diligence, which is really product-wise. The only thing I'm thinking about is, can I build a product that I think that does not exist today and will be compelling and different? I never do a financial model at all.
Why?
And I am a former CFO. So I'm very financially oriented because it's totally useless at that point. I mean, at some point when I raise money, we have to one piece of paper. If they want more than that of numbers, then they don't know what they're doing because it's so early, Figuring out paperclip costs 5 years from now is sort of an irrelevant exercise. Some people do 2 hours. So anyway, July 1st, I decide I'm pulling the trigger. I'm going to do it.
Let's back up a step because I really want details here. Are you building a deck?
No.
Jeff. Okay, so we had one of the co-founders of Priceline talks about puts Post-it notes all over his house. What do you do? You're literally walking around just thinking about it in your downtime?
Yeah. I mean, I am not recommending this, so this may sound really sloppy. In fact, it's really terrible, but I don't write very much down, but I'm thinking about it. I'm doing my due diligence. So I did talk to architecture firms. I'm going online to see every product out there that I think would be comparable. So I'm trying to understand the industry and understand the product that's out there. And I'm just trying to think about what do people really need and what do they not have.
Okay, I want to get to July 1st in a minute.
Yep.
But what's different about what happened with your decision to pursue Contour that was different from other ideas where I'm sure you've obsessed for 2
Yep.
weeks and decided, no, I'm not going to go in that
Yep.
direction? What needs to happen?
So two things have to happen. One is I have to feel that there's this product that's not out there. I also have to feel business-wise, because I'm not doing this for fun. I'm doing it because I think it's going to be a successful business. So I've got to feel like there's going to be a business model, and there's $60 billion being spent in offices, and there's no website that helps you make your decisions. So I feel pretty good about that. I feel good about the potential business model. And I'm intellectually interested in it. So that's another thing I solve for, which is I've got to be willing, I don't sell companies very easily. So a lot of the companies I have 8, 9, 10 years later. So this is like you got to think of it as a long-term relationship. I've got to like it. So there are things out there that I don't do. Like I don't do ad technology ever again. It's a good sector. There are opportunities. I'm sick of it. So I did it for 9 years. I don't do it. I don't do messaging apps just because I just don't find it very interesting myself. So things like this, I like the aesthetics of offices, so it just intrigues me. And so I thought it was a good idea and something I'd have fun with.
What about MongoDB did you find personally satisfying?
Mongo's a different story because Dwight, who was one of those two founders of DoubleClick, and I, so we are actually both the founders of Business Insider, Gilt, and MongoDB. He has focused almost all his attention on MongoDB. He's one of the most brilliant technical minds in the entire internet. He doesn't really like being out talking to people that much unless it's a very technical presentation, so he doesn't try and get his name out there, but he is astonishingly good. So we were going to do something a little bit different. It didn't start with MongoDB. We started with cloud computing. We started to do something that was much broader, too broad. This was different than a pivot. It was actually a focus. So after about 9 months, we figured out we were doing too much and that we had some breakthroughs in the database area, and I thought about it a little bit more, and so changed our business model. And that does happen out there. Gilt has never changed. Business Insider expanded, and Mongo actually became more focused. So you never know.
So let's get back to July 1st.
Yeah.
You decide Contour's moving forward.
Yep. Pulling trigger, it's going to happen. So then the next thing I need to do is hire a CEO. And so then I start going through my network. And the person I found, I wanted someone who had a design orientation and a product orientation. So, person who runs Business Insider has to really be a journalist. Person who runs Mongo has to really have a technical background. And this, I wanted a product background, which is the same as Zola. And it just turned out that the CEO of Zola, who worked for me for 5 years at Gilt before we started Zola, her Stanford Business School roommate had exactly that background. And so she introduced me to her, and she knew that she was moving to New York a month later. I was out in California. I met her and brought her on board.
But you did say, that's a very specific domain expertise, but Henry did not have it. Admittedly, turned out to be a great journalist, but wasn't. It seems unusual you even took the meeting with Henry. So how did that?
It's a little bit different. I knew Henry, not incredibly well, but I knew Henry from before. He was a fantastic writer. So he had a blog that lots of people liked. I mean, not like Business Insider, but thousands of people liked. He was known as a great writer, as an analyst, and a great, and a very smart guy. So he had building blocks, but I knew, sometimes when you hire someone who's a little bit off model from what you're thinking about, that can either be a brilliant move, or a year later, you're like, that's a terrible idea. And one thing in journalism people will tell you is that journalists will not be excited if they're working for a non-journalist, because they'll never feel like he understands. And that was the risk. If it hadn't worked out, everyone would have said that. But it worked out through luck or skill, and he's done an incredible job. And has been a really innovative thinker in the way, because we do so many things fundamentally differently than existing players.
Okay, so let's talk about the recruitment process. What do you look for in your CEOs?
So each situation, the jobs are very, very different. So, in the beginning for Mongo, you needed someone who could really, and Dwight did this. He was the CEO and was coding for 2 years. It was a development project. So only later on do we need someone that had more business experience. One of the fallacies, I think, everyone in Silicon Valley VCs will tell you that you need to have a CEO who can take this from now through like Facebook size. So they want the next Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg and Bill Gates will be the two best examples. And I don't actually think that's true. I think it's very rare you find that. And there are people who are perfect for the first couple of years and may not be perfect for a period after that. And it's a job like anything else, and you find someone else.
You tell them up front that this may be this might be a 2 to 5 year path, and then we're going to have a growth stage CEO.
Yeah, but I tell them the same thing I was told when I became the president of DoubleClick. So they said, look, you're 33, you're going to be managing a couple hundred people. You've never managed anywhere close to this number of people. We're publicly traded already. So the reality is, at the rate we're going, you probably won't be the right person 2 years from now. And so I said, look, this is an awesome job. It's like 5 times bigger than any other job I've ever done. So 2 years from now, if we're doing great, you'll probably change your mind. And if you're not, I've had an incredible run, and it's better than what I'm doing right now. So I'll take that trade. It turned out that they were happy with it, and I kept going and stayed there for 9 years. But sometimes a change can be right, and sometimes people recognize, I have hired many people, and I've fired many people. And, often, not always, often people are like, I actually understand that I wasn't the right person at a certain point. And so I get it now.
What are some of your more unusual interview questions or tactics?
No, I don't pride myself on having a particularly unusual interview. I think the thing I have said many times publicly is that everyone overvalues the interview and they undervalue the reference checks. So if you had a choice and you could only do one, you should only do reference checks. You should never meet the person. Now, no one in this room would have the guts to do that, but it's actually a better choice.
Have you ever done it?
And I've never not met the person, and I still think that fit is a little bit important, but yeah, everyone overvalues that because then you're just measuring interview techniques, and that's not the most important thing. What matters, and if you look at all the people you've worked with in the past, at a point when you just say you were a manager and there were 6 other managers, you know that some of those people were hard workers, some had a great attention to detail, some were total assholes, but that doesn't always come out in the interview. But when I talk to the fellow people, they'll tell me. And so you need to spend, everyone prides themselves, I interviewed 25 people for this spot. They don't pride themselves in saying, I spent 10 hours of my time doing reference checks. Not, by the way, the time is not always in the actual reference check. It's getting to the right person. And I still have made mistakes over time. I had someone, a CFO from years ago, and hired her, thought it'd be great. And then a year later, I run into someone who says, oh my God, you hired so-and-so? Yeah, well, I worked with her 5 years ago. She's this, and this. And I'm like, oh my God, how come I didn't find you? That is exactly what happened. I didn't get to that person.
And so what are some critical questions you ask those people?
So you want to, and the important thing is to get to multiple people to get the same story, which is one, do you like working with the person? Were they very good? Attention to detail. Each job is different, don't forget, and each skill base is different. So, but if they're going to be a manager, do people want to work for them? At the end of the day, people leave companies only because they don't like their manager. People will stick through, and believe me, we were going through all these rounds of layoffs, it was pretty ugly. But I could see certain areas where people would not leave because they're like, you know what? I work for Mary, and Mary believes in me, and she trusts me, and we're trying to do the right thing, and I'm not going to let her down. So I'm not going anywhere. And so that makes all the difference in the world.
From what I understand, you're a pretty vicious ping pong player. What can you learn about somebody in playing ping pong with them?
I don't know. Mostly just how much they've played ping pong in the past. It is possible I have thousands of hours of ping pong going back to high school. So I play a bunch of competitive ping pong. In fact, I won a tournament actually 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
In the Hamptons. So I'm still out there playing. You can still play for quite a while in ping pong, which makes it very, very fun.
That's not part of your interview process?
It's not part of the interview process, And look, I do think, there's those stereotypes out there. And I know you're joking, but actually, 20 years ago on Wall Street or things, people had these biases like, oh, if you road crew, you're probably going to be really great here. And, that's another sort of discriminatory in the broadest sense way of looking at things. What matters is how do people do their job. And I know tons of people who are great at their job and they're terrible ping pong players or they're terrible at this, or some of them are not even great family people. But that's not what we're solving for here. We're solving for someone who is great at their job and everyone else wants to work with. And the wants to work with is pretty important because you are building a culture. And we've all worked at companies where you thought, I actually like the people here, and it's more collaborative, and nothing's perfect. And you've worked in environments where it's kind of an asshole culture. And if you have that, it's not great. One of the things I'm proudest of today is that, so 2 months ago we had, as we do every year, the DoubleClick reunion. And then we have one specific one that's just for people who were there from 96 to 2000. So think of how many companies you worked with that you haven't worked together for 15 years. And 150 people still show up every year for a reunion. Because we had an intense culture and one where people want to still see everyone, and it's part of the industry, and we built up something that's very, very special there.
Are there certain cultural values that you look to instill in the companies today, or do you let the CEOs drive the culture at these companies?
Look, they're going to be there full time, so it's very important to me, and but they're going to have a big part of it. And look, there's not going to be a similarity in companies that just because I'm associated with them. MongoDB culture, you can imagine, is very different than the Gilt culture. One's more of a fashion company, one's more of a hardcore engineering culture. So they're going to be different, but hopefully they're collaborative, and hopefully they're fun, and hopefully people are concerned about the product. So these are high-level platitudes, but I'm happy with how both have done over time.
What do you see as, you shared some statistics on the growth of billion-dollar companies in New York versus San Francisco. How important do you think geography is to the success of an early-stage company?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important, and you're seeing it, for all the talk about costs or things like this, in the United States, there are two incredibly successful cities. It's New York and San Francisco. They happen to be the two most expensive cities. So in our industry, costs are not the issue. They're not the problem. But only one thing matters is, are we getting talented people? And so the cities where the most talented people in the United States want to live are the cities where internet companies are going to be successful and technology companies are going to be successful. And the third one is LA. And there are lots of other cities that are much cheaper. I lived in Cleveland in high school, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Those are relatively big cities with, no success at all. No success at all because it's an ecosystem. There are 34 people who worked at DoubleClick who have since become CEOs of companies. And I'm not saying that just because only DoubleClick, it's just I happen to track that, and I don't track it for other companies. But that, you're still seeing even today the second generation of the companies that came out of one. So it's like an Adam and Eve thing where you start. Silicon Valley is in its 7th generation. New York is in its 2nd or 3rd generation. But this city could not be doing better in technology. I mean, I couldn't find in 96, in our first 100 employees at DoubleClick, anyone who had worked for a startup because there were no startups. And today, there are thousands. So number one question I got in 96, 97 from the press was, why are you in New York and not in Boston? Today, you're like, what are you talking about, Boston? There's no internet startups in Boston. At the time, that was perceived as the startup center on the East Coast. And New York has completely eclipsed Boston in the internet space, not in the biotech space. Boston's still better in biotech.
So this morning you were at a press conference with Mayor de Blasio about bringing technology education into the high school system in New York. What do you think in general around education could be done, and what do you think will make that program a success, if you do believe it'll be a success?
Yeah, and that program is a great idea. It's just an increased funding and commitment to teaching computer science in the New York City public school system. There are only 1% of students who ever take any computer science. And so obviously that's not enough. Look, there's a huge problem in this country. Everyone here lives it. We don't have enough engineers, and we are making no progress. We're not making little progress. We're making no progress. In 2012, there are fewer people who majored in computer science than 10 years before that. So there are only two solutions, because the math is the math. Either we need to bring more people in from other countries, or we need to grow more engineers here. And as I tell every single politician, and I spend a lot of time with politicians, the only third alternative, if you don't do the first two, is we, the industry, will employ people in other countries. And so that is what's happening to a much, much greater degree than anyone even captures in numbers. JP Morgan tries not to talk about it. I don't know what their numbers are, but they probably have 10,000 people. And by the way, don't forget in like '96 that was probably 0. So we all know what's happening. It's happening to a great degree because our federal government's not doing enough and our school systems are not doing enough. My kids go to a very, very good private school on the Upper West Side, and more years of Latin are required than computer science. And I'm not against Latin, but requiring something is a major statement. And one of those two is looking forward, and one of them is looking a little bit backwards. And so I'd like more computer science.
Yeah, I'm assuming you must have thought about the capitalistic possibilities there. Have you considered starting companies around education for engineers or startups around this space?
Yeah, I really would like to do that. I'm on the board of Yale, and I'm interested in this issue. I have thought about starting a university here. I was involved. I was on the committee that Mayor Bloomberg put together to select Cornell, or just ended up selecting Cornell for Roosevelt Island, which I think it was their idea. It was one of the most brilliant things that any city has done in the last 20 years. RFP process where we offer $100 million worth of land, get a commitment to spend $2 billion in building up a facility, which will produce 1,000 graduates a year, 1,000 who would have gone somewhere else because they would have gone their master's at somewhere else at Carnegie Mellon or something else. And out of those, probably 70% will stay here. I am 100% certain that there will be 25,000 jobs 20 years from now that we will attribute back to someone who was just here and decided to stay here because it was just easier. In the same way that, I always ask people to think about if it was 1895 and Leland Stanford was sitting here, let's imagine we can go back in time, and he said, I'm thinking of putting Stanford here in San Francisco, in Palo Alto, or I could put it in Denver or somewhere else. What's it worth to you, state of California? And so if I put a number on that, I easily get to $1 trillion. The payroll of Google, just assume that Google's only there because of Stanford, it just in California, just over the last 10 years, is $50 billion. That's one company. And then there's the multiplier effect, but there's 100 companies. So I think there's probably $1 trillion by making that decision. So I try and make this case, not always successfully, to mayors and governors to say that that is one of the things in today's society. Having more engineers is an enormous competitive weapon, and you are not doing enough. You're thinking about public transportation, you're thinking about other things, you need to think about that. And it's pretty low on their list. It's growing.
Do you mean specifically software engineers or engineering in general? Because this building, this school was founded around mechanical engineering and the railroad system.
Yeah.
They've been a little slower to adapt the computer science programs. Do you feel that or do you mean culturally science and technology or specifically software engineering?
So I would say that broadly speaking, it's all science and technology, but the most important priority, because it's the biggest shortage, is computer sciences.
All right, I've got a few more questions. We're going to take 4 questions from the audience. If you have one, get your hand ready. What defines happiness for you?
So, look, for me, what's so important is having control over my life. And so I'm known for being just incredibly happy with the balance. I spend a lot of time thinking about time management. So I have an unusual schedule. I am all through DoubleClick, I made sure I always took 5 weeks vacation. For the last 7 years, I make sure I'm out of the office almost all of this time with family. I have 3 kids. And so I actually am out of the office 8 or 9 weeks a year. That's an important part of what I want to solve for in my life. I'm always in contact. So every single day, I'm on email for 2 or 3 hours, but I want to be doing interesting things. So happiness for me is controlling my life and having the balance of family, work, and staying in shape. Those are my 3 most important priorities. And what I tell everyone here is you can do anything, you can't do everything. And so figuring out what you're not going to do, that you do want to do, but you're not going to do, is incredibly important. So I cut back. Starting in '96, I cut back a lot of different things, and I've only been layering back recently.
What did you get rid of that you thought you wanted to do?
Oh, so what I cut back, not to 0, but I bet I cut it back 75%, and these are costly, but any sort of cultural events, going to watch sporting events, and spending more time with friends. And so those are obviously, you'd say, those are all great things, but I cut all those back a lot because I had young kids, and I didn't want to be sitting here. At that time, projecting forward, I didn't want to be sitting 20 years later thinking, oh my God, I did a startup and I never spent enough time with my kids, and I don't feel that way. I feel like I have, and I structured my life that way. And I knew I also needed to stay in shape. It doesn't take that much time, but 7 a.m. I was playing tennis today, and I do a bunch of different things. I do triathlons every year. That's important because I don't have the energy if I don't do that, and that discipline is important. And then over time, not in the beginning, layering in my interests in sort of public policy and education have been things that I've layered in over time.
You were asked a few years ago, or maybe it wasn't a few years ago, but not that long ago, about potential run for public office. What do you, any thoughts there? Change your mind? Might you do so?
I think probably not. I don't see the right thing. I am very drawn. My whole life I've been drawn to public policy, and I think technology is playing a more and more important role, and should play a more important role in the government. So I'm in contact all the time with the mayor, the governor, a lot of different people, and try and help that process. I think being mayor would be an incredibly impactful job and really interesting. Being a deputy mayor would be very interesting. If you'd asked me when I was 21, I had no idea, but I wanted to be a senator. And since then, I've decided that actually that's a terrible job for me, and has become a terrible job because it just changed over time. It's much less interesting. They have to raise money all the time. They get nothing done, and it would drive me crazy to be in D.C. The interesting things that are happening in policy right now are happening at the city level and the state level. So I think I'll remain on the outskirts and try and help where I can, but probably not be an elected official.
You said almost exactly 4 years ago, today, it was 4 years ago yesterday, to Mashable, where'd my quote go? You said...
I have no idea where this is going. I say a lot of stuff. I don't pay attention to it.
You said, and I quote, the NJ Tech Meetup is the most amazing... No. You said, there's still great opportunity. This is 4 years ago exactly. There's still great opportunity on the internet in so many different areas.
Yeah.
Do you still believe that to be true today? And might that always be true?
Yeah, it's funny. 10 years ago, I was worried that the rate of change would slow down, and so far it hasn't. No, I'm seeing I'm seeing huge opportunities. A lot of them in the business-to-business space, actually. So what's happened is not that the internet is changing so fundamentally. I mean, we had a big shift with mobile. The core technology is not changing as much in the last couple of years as it did previously. Costs have come down to be very, very low in many things. That was a big shift that created opportunities. Mobile was big. Now what's happening is that each sector gets bigger, and so things that wouldn't have made sense and couldn't have worked 7 years ago now can work. Contour, which I haven't proven can work yet, but 8 years ago, the spending by furniture companies online would just not have been big enough to support that business. But now I think it probably is. And so you're just seeing new things open up that couldn't have worked before. You're going to see more consolidation. You're going to see a lot of things fail, and that's just part of our ecosystem. So yeah, I feel super bullish. I've also said at various points, but everyone would say this, that financial services, big opportunity. Education, still a big opportunity. We're not all the way there yet. And healthcare, definitely three of the biggest sectors. I do feel, by the way, that things like in e-commerce, I think there are fewer opportunities. In the areas where that are super sexy, they're getting awfully crowded. So there'll be some new things you can do, but dating, e-commerce, things like that, food delivery, too many sites.
So that was supposed to be my last question, but I have to follow up with that because the backdrop of our interview is the headquarters of Jet.com that's raised $220 million. Only 7% of e-commerce of retail transactions are e-commerce. So I'm surprised. You say you don't believe in it because it's too crowded, or you don't think that 7% is going to get high enough?
Oh no, there's zero risk to the fact that e-commerce is going to grow for the next 20 years and steadily. So that is a guarantee. And it's one of those fundamental trends. By the way, when I'm thinking of something, I want to bet on a trend because I hold things a long time that I can count on, not for the next 2 years, but I can count on for the next 10 years. And so that is going to happen. No, the question is, how do you find your position and niche? And what Jet is doing, and I know those guys, it's an enormous bet, an enormous swing. So that I really admire. Can they find the position, and have they figured out a way to fundamentally lower costs in what they're doing? That I'm not sure I understand yet. I'm not persuaded yet. But it's still early.
So
I didn't think Twitter was going to work either. So, I mean, don't pay attention to me.
well, and it may not.
Well, I think Twitter is fundamentally working. So, I'm not. It's more, not whether it be a 10 billion or 30 billion. People use it all the time. It's a great success. My son actually worked at Twitter in San Francisco this summer. He's a junior in college. So it's working. It's growing. We'll just have to decide how big it is. But I underestimated completely how big that would be.
All right, this really is my last question, then we're going to hit the floor from the audience. But yesterday, Jeff Bezos announced his own plans for a space-related venture. Is that, first of all, is that just the new toy of the billionaire? And second of all, would you ever consider, and I'm not trying to put a stamp on wealth, but is that something you'd ever consider? Do you have any interest in space?
No. I mean, I think it's great that some people are doing it, but it's just not the area that interests me the most. I think if things I would do over time would probably be more kind of nonprofit oriented, policy oriented. I mean, that's sort of an opportunity. I'm probably going to be more focused over time over problems that I see. So,
I really want to go to the moon. That's a big problem.
Yeah. Poverty, income inequality, education, things like that are big issues. I'd like to, if I could come up with ideas to contribute to that conversation, I'd probably push myself there. But what Jeff is doing, what Elon's doing, is super cool, and I think it's great. And look, Jeff is, I still think is the most impressive CEO of the last 20 years. I mean, what he's done is extraordinary, and the long-term vision. Is the only guy at the table who's really genuinely thinking about his company 25 years from now. Everyone else has a shorter time frame, so it's impressive. And in a different way, I mean, my second choice, Elon is. I met him in '98 when he was doing, I think it was called Zip2 at the time, and what he's done in that story on all those companies is just so unbelievable. It's so, we need to tip our hat to both those guys. It's incredible.
Questions? Yes, right. Oh, we gave you one already, so we're going to go to you. Yes. Yep. You got it. Speak up.
My name is Melissa Lang, and I would like to ask, so you have a history of working and starting different companies in very different industries. How do you manage that from anything from retail to engineering to...
You're saying I have a focus problem.
How do you manage that? Because a lot of people can't even focus on one.
Yeah, so just to repeat the question, I do things in very many different industries. So how does one play in different industries? For me, it's intellectually interesting, and I need to just make sure that I don't overplay my hand. So I had a good understanding of why the Gilt business model could work and why there'd be demand and why that had worked in France. But then you got to not convince yourself that you can pick women's dresses for someone else. So as long as I'm not doing that, and you just have to, I think there's some people, and the media builds it up, that give you the impression that the CEO does everything and picks every product and designs everything, and their PR people fund that idea. And so I can assure you that I understand that I don't. There's most of the things I don't do, And so you have to focus on what you can do, and then make sure everyone else is doing. I mean, there was 1,000 people in a company. Obviously, you're only doing so much. You're involved with a couple big decisions, and picking great people. And so that I think I can do in these industries, and I can know enough about the industry to do that. So I think it's okay. I don't, do I make technical decisions for Mongo? Not at all. Dwight and Elliot, who are the other two co-founders, make those decisions. If it's a business-related decision, then I can do that. Henry does everything editorially. When we're out raising money or doing something that's more in my domain, and I can offer some expertise, then I do that. So it's just important to know what you can do and what you can't do. And I'm realistic about what I can do. And you got to stay out of the way. One of the things I learned when DoubleClick grew so quickly is that so quickly you've got to, be able to delegate and let people do their jobs and hold them accountable and not get in the way. And by the way, it's painful. Every day I see things in all the companies that I'm involved with that I would have done differently. Like, just more, it's less a group than you're just focusing on what you can do. So Mark Zuckerberg runs, when I was CEO of Gilt or DoubleClick, I did my job very differently than Mark does. Mark really focuses on product. And he says, everyone else, you do all the other things. And so in my case, certainly at DoubleClick, I wasn't as much of a product person then, and so I didn't do a lot of product. They did everything else, and someone else had to do that. So you just got to understand what you do well, and everyone else has to do everything else.
I think, for me, when we spoke privately, the word that stood out was that you saw yourself as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fundamental difference than how many of us see ourselves as founders, and a really important distinction. Something to think about in response to that question. Question up front. Yep.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. And I had a question because to me popped up, the MongoDB look different from other companies. And my question is selfish because I also happen to be in a business like infrastructure, the software infrastructure. And when I look at the history in open source, of course, a lot of value in the software infrastructure is created in open source. There are companies like Tableau that's created product companies actually profitable with proprietary software. I don't know if you have, because you clearly say that you don't take part on the technical side, but from the perspective of creating profit, right? Because profit is also important. Do you have any insights for an entrepreneur that's creating a company with software infrastructure space?
Well, just questions more about open source and can we create a profitable business model? And it's a really important question. When we knew there was an opportunity to create a different type of database. This is a non-relational database, and we didn't think that we could do it. We couldn't convince people to spend $1 million on our product in the beginning because, frankly, it wasn't good enough. It wouldn't have been good enough. They should replace Oracle with us. So the only way to get there was open source. And Red Hat was really our role model. Red Hat is a company that's probably worth $10, $12 billion today. That was an open source operating system company. So we thought that most future companies would essentially be almost freemium companies. And actually the role model for me, bizarrely, for MongoDB is LinkedIn. And you'd say, no, that's completely different. LinkedIn started and spent 5 years building up a database of resumes. They didn't have any revenue. It was basically an open source database of resumes. Then what they did is start, because they had that, charging companies to use it and providing features that made sense. And so Mongo, although it is open source, we build things on top of it now increasingly that are not open source. And so if you need something, you need specific integration with Kerberos, which Goldman Sachs needs, then that's not open source. And so we think that can work, but there aren't that many examples of open source successful companies. Mongo is, in the last financing round, worth $1.3 billion. So people think it's going to be successful, but we're not all the way there yet. We're not profitable at all. It's an expensive thing to do. It's a big swing, but the logic is that Oracle's worth $180 billion. 100,000 companies are using our product right now, even though only probably 4,000 are paying. So can we build something that's worth 10% of the value of Oracle? That's the bet that investors are making, and we think it's going to happen.
All the way in the back, who stood up the whole time?
So first, I agree with your assessment on B2B and fintech as a B2B fintech founder.
Great.
You've seen a lot of companies succeed and fail. What are the most common things that you see that causes companies to struggle, or common things you found in your years of leading companies that if I haven't done this, I know I can't do X or Y. Any comments to share?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one because it's so high level and you're talking about different industries. I've seen many examples where people are as I said before, launching a product that's just not that compelling. And so they just don't think it's that great. They don't think it's that great. There are other substitutes, alternatives, and so they're not, the test of do you tell your friends about it? You guys have all used lots of different sites. There aren't that many sites in the last couple of weeks that you refer to your friends. And those are the companies that are going to make it.
But in fintech or a B2B space, you still go with that model?
So to a certain degree, yes, because there you're still going to see reviews online. The Lending Club product was something that stood out. That was a fintech product, but consumers loved it and it worked on both sides and they found a niche and it made a lot of sense. Then it's all just execution. So then you're back to people. And look, if you were all CEOs right now, and this was a CEO gathering, and each one of you has a CTO. And if I said to you, raise your hand if you think your CTO is in the bottom half of CTOs in this room. And very few people would raise their hand. So obviously there's a problem there because half of you have a CTO who is in the bottom half of CTOs. And you just don't know it. And that's true of head of sales, that's true of everything. And so the question is, how good is your group? is it really good? And when I've looked back over time, or when we have done a good job, and I watch and see what those people are doing, I realize I did a great job of hiring. And in some cases, I'm like, that group wasn't that great. There was a moment, if you asked, when we had 175 people, which is not a huge company at DoubleClick, and you said, your CFO at that point, what was he doing 10 years later? So 10 years later, he was the CFO of Oracle. So the question is, for you guys who have a 175-person company, can your CFO scale to be the CFO of Oracle? Head of HR. What was my head of HR doing 10 years later? He was the head of HR at Cisco. What was my number 2 person in HR? So think of your number 2 person in HR. She was the head of HR at Coach. And then 6 people on the finance team, in that team in, let's say, 98, 99, 2000, have since become publicly traded CFOs. I also have examples where that's not as good. So it's not that all my people have been great. I've never had as much success in great CMOs, world-class CMOs, over time. So sometimes it works, sometimes, but that ends up over time, determining whether your company's going to be great or not. I'd say one story that was important for me when, in the beginning, DoubleClick was an ad network. We had our own technology, and at one point we decided we were going to stop doing ad network and focus only on the technology. And we were a publicly traded company, so it means we were going to abandon over time revenues that were technically 80% of our company. Don't do that as a publicly traded company. It's a hard thing to pull off, which we ultimately did. Went to the board, told them we're thinking about doing this. We thought, this is going to be an ugly board meeting. And you know what they said? They said, you know what? Makes sense. We actually never liked the original business model. And so, there's a golden rule when you're in sales. If you have the order, stop talking and just go on. But I couldn't help, by the way, why did you invest if you didn't like the original business model? It doesn't make any sense. And they said, you know what? This is Bain Capital. He said, we weren't sure. We just didn't think we liked it. We love the team, and we figured that you guys would figure out something better. And I remember thinking at the time, I never would have had the confidence to bet so much on a team over the idea. And it turned out that they were right. So I stuck in my mind. Sorry.
Last one. I saw your hand first, right there in the middle. Yep.
You said if you see most of the success business, they didn't spend even $1. So what's the point in logic is not going to happen? What's the point for that?
What's the point of not spending money on marketing?
Yeah, what's going to happen if those success business didn't spend even $1?
So in the beginning, look, you can get a bunch of people to try your site. Most sites, business models don't need millions of people to make it work. You need to have thousands. And so, yes, everyone in your company is going to send it out to all their friends. You're going to get people to try it. You're going to try and get some press. You're going to be in events like this. And so generally today, you can get thousands of people to try. And if you get that, that's going to be enough for you to figure out whether people really like it, whether it's B2B or B2C. And then you have to just really figure out, is it working great or not? Zola is a good example. You haven't seen a lot of ads. We do some advertising now for Zola. I also don't like to do advertising until I know the lifetime value, and I don't know that in the first month or two. But Zola was being passed on. So in the beginning, can you imagine who would sign up for a wedding registry when no one's ever used it before? It's the most important day of your life. So in the beginning, we had 30 couples that we knew who used it, but each one of them invited people. And now, next year, about 50,000 couples will use us as their wedding registry in year 3 because they like the product. So look, advertising, I ran DoubleClick, so I've spent lots of time in advertising, and over time, it's very important. But in the beginning, you've got to focus on that product, and it better survive on its own.
This community is a lot about giving back and helping one another. I told you this on the phone also. What can we do to help you or any of your companies? Because I'm sure every single person here will like a page or tweet something or whatever we can do, because this is not a one-way street. So what can we do as this community to help you out?
I mean, look, hopefully I see well-dressed people here who are buying things on Gilt and getting news from Business Insider. And I'm sure there are companies using Mongo here, but there should be more. Anyone you know is getting married should use Zola. It really is a fundamentally better product. And then once, probably 6 months from now, once you're moving offices and you have some scale, we're really aiming at larger companies. Contour will be the right choice there. So, but look, what I spend part of my time doing is trying to encourage the ecosystem. I feel like in 96, I was really one of a handful of people that had to explain why I was in New York. And so I want to keep giving back and build up this ecosystem, which has brought so much, enjoyment, fun, excitement, career, money to thousands and thousands of people. And so it's so validating to see this be an important part of the entire tri-state area. And so what you're doing, everyone here, which is starting new companies, I think is great. So I'm really happy about that.
Thank you. I love that when we ask what you want, you immediately went right to the salesman hat. I love that that's still core to what you do.
It's true.
So since you took my seat, I was supposed to more graciously snag this thing, but we are giving you, since never mind that. Our third, we just started doing this with the mayor, third certificate of mayoral recognition and excellence in innovation. We really appreciate you being here tonight. How about a big round of applause for Kevin Ryan?
That's it.
Thank you very much. All right. That was pretty awesome, right? We're wrapping up in a minute. Don't leave just yet. Kevin said he'd hang out for a few minutes, but it turns out he still has a job at Gilt, and it happens to be, or a role at Gilt, it happens to be Fashion Week, so he's got to get to another event after this that I'm sure won't be anywhere near as cool or have anywhere near as many good-looking people. But, so you got to let him leave the building. You can say a quick hello if you want, but you got to let him leave. A few announcements. If you are interested in presenting your startup at this event in the future, go to njtech.me, click apply, fill out that form, and eventually Laura, who had to leave early tonight, who's our startup ambassador, we'll see if you're a good fit for the group. If you're at a big company and you'd like to bring in this kind of environment where we bring in entrepreneurs and people